it is important to note that it's not realistic to compare Kenya's debt with countries like Japan or the States or the UK. And this is the reason why. Because of the next point, which I'm going to talk about, is because of the conditions that the loans come with. So what do we mean by conditions and requirements? Just like how you would go take a loan in the bank will measure what is the risk that huyu mtu ataturudishia pesa zetu. Same thing, even with countries, institutions that offer, places that offer loans, they check, are you able to pay your loan? And based on the risk, your conditions will definitely be different. Your requirements will definitely be different. And so some of those conditions are what actually impact countries. So now let's talk about those conditions. Obviously, we borrow from different places. We borrow internally. Kenya's government borrows from banks within Kenya and other institutions. Secondly, we borrow between countries. So we can have a loan between, like directly with China, for example. That's a loan between Kenya and China. It's a loan between countries. And then it could also be a loan between Kenya and other multinational institutions. Now, these institutions is like the IMF or the World Bank. Now, based on where we get the loans, we will have different sets of conditions for those loans. So, for example, with the loans that we took with China for projects such as the SGR or the Thika Road Superhighway, one of the conditions that we had was that for those projects, that work would only be done by Chinese companies. And so that's why you saw China, Wuyi, all those companies that were Chinese, tulikuwa tunaona. It was part of the requirement of the loan. So that's one set of requirements. In cases where we've borrowed from institutions, they would have a different set of requirements. So institutions like the IMF would actually require us, like would touch on how we run government as part of the requirements. And one of the ways they do this is through something they call structural adjustment programs. Now these conditions, they go to the extent of, these conditions within these programs, they go to the extent of dictating how much government spends on specific things, how much, where does government put some of its money in the name of removing these countries from poverty. So, but studies have been done that, some of these conditions have actually left different countries at a worse off place than they originally were. And I'll attach some of the some documents for you to read if you want to read more about that. And I'll give an example of how something like that has happened.